So on the intermodal space, you can use any kind of equipment. You can use a 20, a 40, a 53-foot container. You can use 53-foot trailers. There's so many different opportunities on intermodal, and that's what makes it exciting and fun. When it comes to intermodal, there's a lot of customers that could do 100% intermodal or 100% truckload. The nice thing about that space is you can interchange them and offer a variety of options and mode selection. And we recommend that to our customers. The main reason we recommend it is, there's a lot of things that happen in the industry. So if you play in the space with both modes, you're not stuck in hurting if one of them has a negative situation or has a downfall. In regards to intermodal, the best fit, sometimes, it's not the rule of thumb all the time, but anything over 700 miles is something you really want to look at for intermodal. It's very important also to look at locations that are close to major ramps. Anytime you get outside of 50 miles from a major ramp, the drayage gets to be kind of cost prohibitive in moving intermodal because you have that trucking portion on the front end, you have the trucking portion on the back end. So when you're looking at an intermodal move, if you're too far from either one of those ramps, you're going to add cost just in the trucking of the pickup or the delivery. Sometimes heavier products are good for intermodal for the smaller boxes. I know that sounds very odd, but in case of the 40s, a lot of times your heavier commodities, for instance, lumber or coils or anything that creates a more density within the container, it's better for a 40, and it's also better than using truck it a lot of times because you can load heavier onto that 40. It's just the distribution of the weight that allows you to do that heavier weight. Transit time now has gotten really close to what I would call a single driver truck. On a single driver, you're very close. Sometimes you almost match what the transit time is. And usually the rule of thumb is truck plus 1 day. So you might want to look at those longer from the west all the way to the east. Those might be truck plus 2 days. The beautiful thing about the door-to-door intermodal service is it's a truck with a container. It comes to the door, picks up the product. We get it to the rail. We take care of all the rail billing. We do all that behind-the-scenes work. And then once it gets to the destination, we're again working with the trucker to pick it up at the ramp, taking care of that situation, and then getting it to the delivery, hopefully on time. That's what we strive for. And then once we get it to the delivery, then it's just get it unloaded and just like you moved it from point A to point B without any of those extra steps in the middle. I love the intermodal service because a lot of people would think that you don't have the ability to have equipment and use equipment in a drop and hook basis. And when it comes to intermodal, it's almost preferred. Basically, it's preferred when there's volume. So if there's a volume on a particular lane or volume out of a particular location, we prefer to have the drop and hook equipment and run it in that scenario because it keeps the turning of the equipment moving faster, and then the drivers don't have to wait as it's getting loaded and they don't have to wait as it's getting unloaded. Now, it's a little bit different when it comes to random or spot moves. Then you wouldn't so much prefer the drop because there's no consistency to it. The other thing that comes with a problem on drop is if you're too far away from a major ramp. That's just going to add cost because you have to remember there's that extra leg to go pick up the drop container. Common questions that we get when folks are changing over from a truckload product over to an intermodal product would be the weight. And that is, I would say, from the time I started in this industry to now, that is the biggest thing that we continue to work on is the weight. You cannot load as much weight onto a 53-foot container as you do onto a 53-foot trailer. And the reason for that is the container itself is heavier and more dense, but also that chassis unit that's underneath the container adds additional weight as well. So when you take the container and the chassis and then you look at the truck could be a sleeper, it may not be a day cab, that's all going to add additional weight to what you're hauling inside of the container. And so what we do is we work with our customers to understand those differences, and we also give them loading diagrams, and we give them opportunities of how they need to block and brace. Blocking and bracing, I know I'm talking talking about weight, but blocking and bracing is very important for rail movement. That way it doesn't shift and create a diversity in what the weight is. What's important on intermodal is it's the distribution of weight. It's not so much always the full weight, but the distribution of weight. When we go to different new customers, I would say, and we look at their commodity, the commodity is extremely important. The reason the commodity is important is because the blocking and bracing for moving on the rail. If you think about it, when you put a container on the rail, there's going to be vibrations on the rail that could create that product to shift within the container, and then you've got this long train of containers. If one of them is not blocked and braced and it creates a really rapid shift, that could really cause a problem on the rail, and you've probably heard of derailment. A lot of times, and most of the time, derailments are caused because somebody didn't block and brace their product appropriately, and it shifted and it caused a big issue with all the containers that were on the train.